Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Chess4Life Spotlight. I'm your host, Elliott Neff, National Master and founder of Chess4Life. With me today, we have another special guest who is a longtime chess parent of multiple kids who participated and done well in chess events. So I'm excited for this conversation. And Breck Haining, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Elliott. I have two children, not quite multiple, and you're right. I'm a chess parent, a novice player, but I enjoy the game. For me, chess is more about teaching.
That's awesome. That's great. And that's one of the reasons we're talking here, right? Because we connected in the chess circles at various events, communities, known each other for years. And I'm excited to share with our audience some of what you've discovered in this journey of chess with your kids. Before we do that, can we go back a little bit and let our audience know a little bit about you, if you don't mind? Where are you from? What are you focused on at this stage in your life? Anything you would care to share about your career or your background?
Certainly. I grew up in the Seattle area, born in Boston, but my folks moved out here in the early 60s. I guess cutting to now, I'm an engineer in the aerospace industry. I primarily work with customers. I'm an interface between my company and the technical community. So I support our sales teams. I support aircraft delivery, a lot of diversity in what I do and the people I interact with.
That's awesome. Just quickly, how long have you been in that kind of space?
Well, I've been almost 30 years in this particular industry.
Wow, that's a long period of time. But applaud you doing that. I'm sure you've seen tremendous change over those years.
Yeah.
Let's now dive into, we started by saying you're a chess parent of kids who've played chess. Do you mind sharing, at what point did you start introducing chess with your children, and what was your motivation to do so?
Yes. First, I'll give you a little background. I think I was maybe 8 or 9 at one of my grandparents' houses. And my grandfather had a chess set. My older brother and I kind of wondered what it was. My father said he'd teach us to play. So I learned how the pieces moved and captured. What I learned was, as long as you kept your finger on the piece, you had not moved it. You could move the piece around, keep your finger on it, move it back, think, move a different piece, but keeping that finger on that piece was the way to go. And it's really quite comical now learning how tournament chess is played, but my older brother got really interested and he started studying chess tactics. Bobby Fischer had a book out at the time, Learning Chess with Bobby Fischer, and he soon began cleaning up in all of our games. So for me, it wasn't that interesting, but he really got into it. Fast forward many years, when my son Kyle was in first grade, he saw some kids playing chess at school, and he found a book on chess that he thought was interesting. And my wife tells me he'd like to learn to play chess. And I'm going, the light bulb goes on. If you want to learn chess, you should study tactics. So I went by a store. I found a plastic chess set for $3. And I started looking in bookstores for a book on chess. And I found this Susan Polgar's, I guess you don't see it so well, Susan Polgar's a world champion's guide to chess.
Very nice.
The reason I picked that was, one, it looked like it had really nice introduction on chess, but also important was this was a women's grandmaster. And teaching about chess is not just about chess, but you want to teach other things. And one was, I wanted both of my children, I have a son and a daughter, Kyle and Karen.
Yeah.
Women can be very good at chess.
Wow.
And
Okay.
as I recall, Susan Polgar's Hungarian. So you can go, you can talk about people from other countries. So
Absolutely. So this is already very fascinating. You've covered a lot of ground quickly, which is, you yourself got introduced to the game, right? Through your grandfather, your dad, and then an older brother who enjoyed winning against you, it sounds like. And
easily.
Right, lots of memories there. And you even brought up something for our non-chess playing audience, or those who haven't played tournaments in person. I'm going to touch on this because you mentioned about how you could touch this piece and hold it, and you haven't really made your move until you've let go of that piece. And so when people play in tournaments, a key rule is if you touch a piece, you must move it if it's a legal move. Yeah. And so as long as your finger's touching it, your move is not complete. So when you're starting out, and I remember doing this in the early days too, you make a move and then you suddenly second guess yourself and you don't let go. And you're like, oh, wait, I'm not sure if I really like that. And you hold your arm up and look around and, oh, maybe I'll put this back. But the key point there was that you mentioned you would just, move's not done, so pick a different piece and move it. Whereas in tournament play, the piece you touched is the piece you have to move. And so anyway, there's a little bit of tournament rules for our audience in case they didn't know.
More thinking.
Thinking, absolutely. Another key point, think before you move. Now, you said something really fascinating, though, about when your son was in first grade. Let's make sure that's clear. At 1, they can chew the pieces. They don't usually play with them that well. So in first grade, he became interested in chess, and you didn't just go, that's great, let's learn how to play it well. You appear to have made some conscious choices at that point, going, it's not just about chess, it's about a more holistic view of life. And you actually picked a book which would be a non-stereotype of chess, where it's primarily a male-dominated game still, although that's changing a little bit. And so you found a book by the world chess champion of women's world chess champion in order to bring in that piece. And you even mentioned how she was from Hungary. So you're bringing in some geography and other parts. Can you delve into that a little bit further about your mindset when you were going through that process with your son and your daughter?
Yes. So as a parent, one of the things you're wanting to do is instill value and build character. And the various tools at your hands are sometimes, what are they interested in? What I found as I got into chess was it was a great tool for teaching. Chess, you have to think ahead. You have to consider, if I do this, what will my opponent do? And you have to think about, what is my opponent planning to do? What might they be thinking? You have to look at it from another perspective. And you also have to have a longer view of situations. In many casual games, you'll find people kibitzing. Take the queen, or move here, move here. And a lot of times with casual play, it's really bad advice.
Yeah. And interruption, for those that don't know the term, kibitzing is a term used in chess to say a game's going on and people watching it are chatting about it. It's a really fun, typically a noisy environment, unless it's online chat. But chess is supposed to be between 2 players in a tournament. Nobody's allowed to talk. But in casual play, kibitzing is, hey, you're seeing the game and suggesting or commenting on moves. It makes a really fun collaborative learning experience.
Yes. Though in those, kind of side events, some of the advice you get is really bad advice. And it's the same in life. Here, smoke this, try this pill. Really, you have to see far enough to understand why this is bad advice.
Wow, that is let's pause there a second, unpack that a little bit further, because I'm hearing what you're saying, that as a chess player, here you're playing your game against someone else casually, let's say, and someone watching the game suggests a move and suddenly you're intrigued with it. But the player suggesting it doesn't mean it's a good move. You might be just being influenced by that suggestion. And like what you're saying is, you've got to make your choice and evaluate, is this actually a good choice? Think, don't just move.
There are a lot of choices in life, and many are better than others. So in teaching chess, that's one of the goals, is that I wanted my children to develop this independence of thought and to recognize longer term. And many in our culture will just say, hey, I do such and such, and I don't see any harm in that, and it's really great. But longer term, there are detriments. And so for me, chess was in part a teaching tool. The tactics were great. As my son was in first grade, I started to set up the pieces on a board. It's different when you look at a book versus you see it on a board. Now, the board that I got was a small, 12 by 12, not the tournament size 20 by 20. It's a different experience when you're playing on a larger board.
Yes. And for clarity, that's the inches dimension, not the number of squares, since a chessboard is always 8 by 8.
Correct. But just for, beginning, I'd set up these tactics that I found in the book, and you would solve them from white's perspective. You'd solve them from black's perspective. And, I had enough knowledge that I could quickly transpose some of the pieces or make it slightly different. So even though there might be one puzzle in the book, I could quickly change it to, 20 different puzzles. Some puzzles that would be based on a back rank mate. You could put a rook on a particular row, and that was effectively the back for that king. So you could make variations. Throw on a piece was just distraction, but this one was an excellent book for starting, and it's not the only one, but it was a good start. So my son started to play in first grade in the school chess club. My wife learned the school would have a tournament, and we were thinking, well, okay, sure, he can sign up. And he signed up for the intermediate tournament. And even though he was, just a beginner, but he wound up winning first place in that.
Wow. So he was a quick start. Was that still in first grade?
That was in first grade. And we had some friends at church that had twins, and they're telling us they're going to these chess tournaments every week. And we're going, every week? and I couldn't even imagine that. So we learned about that. So in second grade, my wife took our son to a tournament. And very quickly, it became from, maybe once a month to, every week. But there was also a side story here. This was back in 2007, I think. On a business trip, I ended up in the hospital with very severe pain. I was in Japan, and the doctors had told me that, I said, I think when I get back, I'll go see a specialist. And they were saying, yes, that's a very good idea. And in Japanese culture, they don't always come out and tell you what's wrong. But I don't know, it might have changed now. But then they were just, yes, it's a good idea to go see a specialist. The short of it was I had kidney cancer.
Wow.
A tumor as large as my fist. And it was in a location that it was basically tearing apart where a major artery was. And so I was having internal bleeding.
Wow.
But I spoke to a specialist, are there any alternatives? And this medical professional says, look, this thing's going to kill you. You need to have it removed. So I went into surgery. Coming out, I was pretty weak. But one thing I could do at the end of the school day is I could put up pieces on the chessboard. So for me, it was something I could do, but it also changed my focus. You only get one chance to raise your kids. So put more effort into that.
Wow.
And I think it was.
What a story. That is incredible.
I think one.
So Breck, that is quite an amazing story where you're traveling overseas, you get this word, and ultimately it is something that could be life ending. And so
Yes.
you had to go into surgery, and I'm sure that gave you quite a perspective check in life.
Young children. And coming out, I realized that I really needed to prioritize family, teaching, and spend time with our kids. I think one mistake many parents make is they'll just tell their children, go study, go practice, just go do. But in my opinion, you need to spend time with your children. You need to help them study. You need to help them focus. And chess was one way that I could do that, was to spend time with both of our children and help them concentrate, help them focus and think things through.
Wow. So if I may ask, 2007, you said, what age were your children at that time?
Let's see. Kyle would have been 7 and Karen would have been 5.
Okay. So we're talking early grades. So kindergarten to 3rd grade range. And so that gave you a shift in your thinking to a degree. And you mentioned being very intentional about investing that time with them in learning and growth. So early on, you talked about your reasons for seeing chess as an area your son had interest. So it's an educational opportunity, which I would imagine you therefore applied that same mindset to other activities. Did your kids participate in other activities outside of chess? Just love to before we come back to a chess aspect.
For me, soccer was the only game to play. And so of course I got the kids into soccer. I was in Scouts when I was young, so had my son involved in that. I would have liked to have my daughter similarly involved, but I couldn't really do the girls program as well. But both of them took piano lessons.
Yeah.
Long story there. My mother once commented that she wished that she had learned piano. She had started to learn and just kind of stopped. Well, that was kind of my experience too. I had lessons for a while. I kind of learned and then just stopped. I said, this is not going to go a 3rd generation. My children are going to learn to play the piano. And so that was one of the things I insisted on. But I also had to make time to sit down with them to help them practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm hearing is this intentionality around what you were doing with your children, using whatever interest whatever there was, to spend that time, build the relationship, help them learn, help them grow. And multiple varied areas, physical, mental, social type activities that you're participating with others, right? Music, all these things. So let's now just talk about chess a little bit more before we talk into more of these benefits and outcomes, which I got some questions I'm burning to ask here.
Sure.
But let's talk about how far your kids went with it in chess. And part of that is, did you push them, encourage them, or just support them? And to what degree did they achieve in chess?
Yeah. I would say that I encouraged and supported. My son very quickly demonstrated an ability with chess, and that you want to encourage. My daughter had interests. She was never quite as interested, but she still had ability, and I could also use this as a teaching tool. My son went on to become a national master, and I think if you see that interview, you'll know he was a national co-master. What is that? National high school co-champion.
Absolutely. And by the way, for those listening, another awesome interview of Breck's son, Kyle, who became a national master, went into STEM career, and is doing some amazing things. Be sure to check out that interview, which is already posted.
I remember going to Atlanta on the plane with him, and he says, I'll play you a game. We had a little travel set. He says, I won't look. And I'm going, well, okay. So we set up the board, and he's, not looking at the board. He's looking the other way. And I tell him, okay, I make this move, and he tells me his move. And I'm thinking after 20 moves, he's going to forget where the pieces are. But the way he crushed me with his knights showed me that he knew exactly where every piece was. And I was just really, really impressed.
Wow. So on the way to national championships, flying across the country, your son plays blindfolded against you. Was that the very first time you had seen him do blindfold chess then?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think so.
What a point. I want to stop here one sec, though, because I can imagine those listening going, wow, well, your son was a genius, just amazing in chess, and, he's got it. Others might not be born with it. How critical do you think there is between natural born ability and the ability to learn and benefit from chess?
A good question. There's very few world champions, but it's not about being world champion. There might be those that have that aspiration, but the end goal was not become world champion. It was about building character and developing talents and learning skills, enjoying chess and having fun. So in part, it's what do you want to get out of chess and what do you want to accomplish? For my daughter, it was not about winning nationals. For me, it was teaching. So I continued to see lots of benefits just in the opportunities, dealing with your emotions. How do you manage to handle someone who's cheating? What do you do when you lose a game that you shouldn't have lost? When
you're winning the game, you blunder, and suddenly you lose the game after, like at nationals, potentially 3 hours of intense effort.
And
what an emotional swing that can be.
I played in a few tournaments myself and had lots of fun. But it gave me a new perspective of how difficult it is to be recording your moves and to concentrate for hours, and then have a game slip through your fingers where you made a momentary blunder, but these are all teaching experiences.
Right, absolutely. And one of the things we like to talk about too, as one of the reasons chess is such a great tool for developing these skills, is, soccer's excellent for all kinds of things. You got teamwork, you got all these different skills and hand-eye coordination, of your different resources. In chess, there is no scenario where you're hiding behind some teammate who didn't pass you the ball or made the mistake. You cannot lay any blame elsewhere, shall we say, other than saying it was my choice, my decision, and I have to live with the consequence. So it's a very personal feeling, right? You're not rolling the dice to decide who moves. There's no piece of chance there. It's the information's in front of you and you do with it what you will with the outcome that comes. And so it is quite a personal skill building to be willing to go through those kinds of emotions, social emotional development through the game of chess, right? The aspect we often talk about called the growth mindset, that willingness to embrace failure in order to get better. And so I appreciate you mentioning these things about building that grit, the resilience, and all those other aspects of helping you in life. So you mentioned how your son went on, became co-national champion, national master in chess, achieved very well. Your daughter wasn't as interested and yet participated. Out of curiosity, how far did she progress in terms of chess?
Well, she was able to beat me by the time she was in junior high. But I think I can still give her a challenge. She was one of the top players in her high school. And you may know in high schools here, they have team events. So being one of the top players in her high school, she was asked to represent the team.
That's awesome. And you know what? I want to correct something I said earlier, that there's no way you rely upon another person. That's true for the individual game. For team events, you are relying upon teammates to do their best and to perform well because you've got the total score of your team. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I want to make sure that's clear because there is that aspect of teamwork.
But even on a team, it's down to the individual choices on those boards.
Yes.
Sorry, kind of an aside I wanted to bring up was one of the things I wanted our children to understand is the quality of education matters. So that I could teach them so far, but I only knew so much. I'm basically a novice. So over the course of time, different instructors would give lessons. I mean, it's entirely possible, as you know, to study on your own and go far. It's also a good way to learn is by having instruction. So we had instructors from different backgrounds, different ethnicities. But thinking about college, you're going, I want you to understand the quality of education matters and the choices in instruction. I can teach you to play chess at an elementary level, but you need someone that's better than me to give you better instruction in chess. And it's the same in life. You can learn from all sorts of people, but to get better in some areas, you need instruction from people that are real experts in those fields.
Wow. I have not heard this one before. And I value this aspect you just pointed out about the benefit of seeking to learn from a wide variety of teaching tools, educators, coaches, mentors, from that aspect of even applying that, like you just said, to college, right? Where you need to evaluate now what is the right fit for where you want to go, who's going to be, what's the choice you're going to make there versus just going, well, I've got 5 applications, let me just pick the one I feel like. No, by experiencing that, you gave your kids that experience in an activity that now applied to college. And obviously from the knowledge I have, your son Kyle, for example, has completed that and moved on into some careers now. So that's awesome. I want to touch upon something though, because you have a son and a daughter who participated. And we mentioned before, and as many people may know, chess is primarily a male-dominated sport and activity. You know, in some ways, I used to say it's the opposite of figure skating, where it's a female-dominated activity. And we've had a couple conversations. I would love to hear your thoughts further on what unique benefits did you see for your daughter going through this experience?
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm reminded of something she told me. It was, where did I put the note? Well, I don't remember the exact quote, But I asked her, what did you feel you really benefited from by participating in chess and learning chess? And what she told me was really, for me, quite surprising. And it was, she doesn't feel intimidated in male dominated events. And, chess tournaments, the reality is they're largely boys, young men, men. There
Mhm.
are women and girls in tournaments, but it's largely a male dominated event. But
Mhm.
just by going through these experiences, she didn't feel intimidated because she could compete.
That is awesome. I immediately start thinking of the parallels into the workforce where
Mhm.
certain areas have been male dominated, and yet there's not a reason they need to be. And
There isn't.
so there's just that pressure, though, because if you are one of only a handful in a large room, you can feel the minority pressure. And so for her to be comfortable in that environment has to give her an amazing advantage in terms of being able to just compete in that space. And I mean competition in a healthy way here, not a
Yeah.
unhealthy way, but just to feel comfortable in that environment. That's amazing.
Yeah. She's studying computer science and music at college.
Wow,
She
that's awesome. So when did she mention that recently during this phase of life where she's in college? I was curious when she had that insight.
I asked her a few weeks back, thinking about you've interviewed my son. Probably not going to interview my daughter. She's tied up with school and other things.
Yeah.
But I wanted to share, uh, not from my own bias and not just from from her perspective, what were benefits. She said,
Wow.
of course, making friends and having fun. But
Yeah.
that one comment, you often read about the benefits of chess, but this was not something I'd ever come across. So I thought, this is something I need to share. So I'm glad you brought that up and reminded me.
Absolutely. No, that is really, really amazing. And you've touched on quite a few different benefits, right? And that's what we're about here at Chess4Life, right? We're on a mission to impact 1 million youth a week with these life skills. We think every kid deserves the opportunity to get these benefits, these skills. And I want to make a quick point here too, is you obviously had the opportunity and the intentionality about providing these benefits to your kids. You could say in some ways, well, that was a blessing of their upbringing and where they came from. We've
Mhm.
seen similar things with other stories that we've highlighted on the spotlight here from students coming from the slums of Uganda, Katwe, where just recently, and this will time date maybe this recording, Robert Katendi, who we just interviewed and it'll be dropping soon in the list here, has now impacted thousands of students in the slum, and they have 29 college degrees have come out of the slum now. And think about that impact of going where someone would probably not conceive of going to school to a higher degree, and they're now literally with that education and opportunity just because of using some of these outcomes, these ways of thinking and problem solving and decision making and planning, as well as those key underlying elements of grit, resilience, and that willingness to fail forward. So, it's wonderful to hear these stories from basically any background can
Mhm.
do this. And I appreciate your perspective, Breck, on a chess parent of a young first grade son and a younger daughter, and your intentionality to bring these benefits with never a, hey, we're going to become world champion in chess or it's not worth doing type of mentality, but this is a vehicle to
Mhm.
help them succeed in life. So as we're wrapping up here, I've just got a couple more questions, but before I do, what else would you add, if anything comes to mind, for parents who might be listening to this and going, you know what, I've heard about chess, I'm a little intimidated by it, not sure if my kids could do it. What would be your advice to anyone listening from that sector?
Everyone has different opportunities, and where you're coming from in life, it doesn't really matter. There's benefit. For me, one thing I saw was the better prepared you are, the better the outcomes will be. So when you're going into a chess tournament, the more you've studied, the better you're going to do. And it's the same in any endeavor. The more effort you put into something, generally, the better you're going to do. And it doesn't mean that you're going to, be the top golfer or be the top chess player or the top in anything, but putting that effort in helps you get better results, and you find out where your abilities and talents are. Maybe you're not the chess whiz, but you learn that discipline of hard work and focus and study, and you can apply that in different areas. So chess is a great teaching tool. You need to invest time in whatever it is, and be a parent to the extent you can. Help your children grow. And I recognize, not everyone has these opportunities. There are people that might have to work 2 jobs to support a family. But chess is a really good teaching tool.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, you don't have to do it all either, right? You find the partners in the community, in the area, who can be different voices and mentors and coaches. And if a person's without financial means, it doesn't mean there's no way. It's a mindset, can-do attitude. Let's figure out a way, because I've also learned, and we teach this even at Chess4Life, if you think you can, you probably can. But whenever you think you can't, you're always right, because you will not discover the way to do it. And so it's like this can-do attitude, find a way, fail fast, fail meaning first attempt in learning, so that you can get better, improve, and strive. So this is great, been talking with you about this. And let's just jump forward to 1 or 2 final things. And everybody listening, please remember, like and subscribe if you want to hear more of these amazing stories about how chess is being used to positively impact locally, nationally, globally. So when you look back upon your career and your parenting in particular, what additional advice would you give? What would you do differently, if anything? And again, I'm thinking of parents of now younger kids. I myself have kids. I'd love to hear, what would be your advice from having walked the path that would be like, here's my recommendations in a nutshell?
Well, having fun is important. And, if your child turns out to be a prodigy, don't crush them with, getting too excited and enthusiastic. It's hey, my son's good at chess. And then you grind all the fun out of it. You have to have that balance. Don't exasperate your children. Listen to what they say and help them in the path they want to go. You might find out that there's other fits. It might be excellent in this area or excellent in that area, but I do think there's a lot of benefit from chess, from music and math, social skill development. Just many things. There was one other thing I wanted to put in a plug for something you teach at Chess4Life. I think you'll recognize this slogan.
Yes, indeed. Win, draw, or learn, because the mindset is there's no losing if your difficult experiences inform and you learn from and help you get better. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up. I love to go back to it. And for anybody listening to this for the first time, it is incredible when you have that mindset, because how many of us have gone through difficult things that feel like losing, yet years later we can look back on them and go, you know what? Without that difficult experience, I would not be who I am today. I would not have made the progress I've made today. And so was it really a loss in the long-term picture.
Chess is a great tool to learn life skills. There's a lot of teaching that can come from chess. So
wonderful. I really appreciate that, Breck. It's been a pleasure connecting with you, reconnecting, in fact, because I did meet your children during some of these events early on. It's great to hear of their progress. And thank you for sharing your insights. I'm sure this will be a great help to some parents who are listening and wondering what to do. Is chess a vehicle? And I would say the nugget that I also took away was the key element. It's not about chess. It's about education and the relationships and fostering and using your children's interests to build and prepare them for life. So thank you for sharing today. Remember, everyone, to like and subscribe, not to miss any of the next episodes.
thank you, Elliott.